I'm Suresh Makhija, a seasoned corporate travel professional and author of The Rookie Corporate Gardener. I'm delighted to be hosting The Journey Manager, which is the corporate TMC series for the Dope News. I look forward to bringing to you fruitful insights from the perspective of the corporate service providers, particularly the travel management companies. Hello everyone. The travel industry today, as we all know, is going through a major crisis, as is every other industry due to the COVID pandemic. No doubt, the effect on travel is significantly higher than on other industries. And we've been hearing a lot about what COVID is doing and et cetera, et cetera. In this series, we are covering the viewpoints of the travel management companies who are a major partner to the corporates as they manage their travel programs. I have with me today, if I may call him the young Turk of the travel industry, the corporate travel management industry, Rakshit Desai, who is Managing Director of FCM Travel Solutions for India and has been at the forefront of the organization as well as a whole load of initiatives, acquisitions, etc. In the past few years. Over to you, Rakshit. Warm welcome. And if you could just share a little bit more of your background and your what brought you to the industry.
Sure. Firstly, thank you for the rather generous introduction, Suresh. I've been, I've been a young Turk for so long. I think I'm starting to demotivate all the aspiring young Turks because their sort of waiting times extending inexorably. But I've only ever had two proper jobs in my life. I started my career as a management consultant, and then I went to work in travel. And the nature of this business, the nature of this industry is such is that it's hugely dynamic. It's ever evolving, and in the flash of an eye, it's been nearly 20 years since what was going to be a short-term stint to experience life at the client end of the spectrum as opposed to the consultant end of the spectrum. One of the reasons why I think I chose and stuck to travel for this long is you learn a lot about yourself as you go through life, right? And as you learn more about yourself and you understand some of the choices that you've made, even in retrospect when you probably didn't understand them that well at the point in time that you made them. But for me, it's very important to emotionally connect to the underlying product or service. So I would struggle with the idea of selling soap. I would struggle with the idea of selling bread. But I find it easy to get passionate about travel. I have an emotional connect to the underlying product or service. I love the notion of travel. I love the notion of crossing boundaries and breaking down borders and barriers and experiencing things that I didn't think were possible or I had only read about in books or watched in movies. So for me, there is, I'm a bit of a romantic when it comes to the idea of travel. And I think that's probably the reason I came in here and I've stayed so long. And now I suspect that I'm probably unemployable in any other sectors. Right?
Yeah. Oh, great. I mean, I love that unemployable aspect, though I'm sure there'll be plenty of industries who would be happy to have you. Okay, coming to the all-important COVID-19 pandemic, okay, we're all aware of the impact and what it's doing. But in your view, how badly affected is the travel industry in the sense that is the recovery going to be something that one can look forward to as being a smooth bounce back, or is it going to be a struggle?
Look, it's always hard to sort of crystal ball gaze. But I mean, first, in terms of the quantum of impact, so I think the quantum of impact has been pretty torrid by any stretch of imagination in any other industry, right? And we talk about the fact that the movie theater industry or cinema distribution's been badly affected, or we talk about gymnasiums that are badly affected, or restaurants or bars. But I would say that we've gone further, because the difference between us and these industries is, on the day of the lockdown, these industries basically had zero revenue, right? With us, we had negative revenues, i.e., more return of goods than sale of fresh goods, right? So no manufacturing unit, no credit underwriting facility, no bank, no restaurant or hotel has had to deal with the unwinding of a forward book of business, that we had already executed, right? So in that sense, it's a double whammy. Not only do I not have new customers coming in through the door, but I also had existing customers walking out because they had to abort their plans. So in that sense, it creates a viability challenge. It definitely creates a cash flow constraint, and it is worrying. In terms of recovery, I think whether smooth or not depends on what position one puts oneself in these intervening months, right? So I think from a market or macro point of view, I think the recovery will be sharp but not full. So I suspect that we'll get to 40-50% of historic volume fairly quickly, but the journey from 50 to 100% might take months, probably years. It's not days or weeks, it's still over months. When we look back, like we look back at the global financial crisis today, over a 15-year sort of data series, it looks like a blip, right? And I suspect this will also look like a blip, except that because the recovery will not be full, I think it will just have a partial recovery and then resume the long-term growth rate. The growth trajectory of the industry. So I suspect that if you put yourself in a position where at 50% of historic volume, either through operational flexibility, OPEX contraction, liquidity preservation, higher degrees of digital enablement, if you've put yourself in a position where you're sort of EBITDA positive at 50% of historic revenues, I think the recovery for you will be smooth. If that's not your planning scenario, my hunch is you will need luck to smooth your journey.
Okay, great. I think very well put in terms of, I think this is the first time I'm hearing, quick recovery and then plateauing out, but not a full recovery. So I think interesting viewpoint, and I can relate to that. Rakshit, you mentioned, how TMCs pan out or play their cards on in the intervening period is how the recovery is going to pan out for them. FCM and you in particular have been extremely active on social media, okay, in the last few months, carrying out a whole load of campaigns, getting back to business, as you call it. So what has been the key rationale behind that, and what is the objective that you are looking to achieve?
So, I'd love to say that there was some minutely articulated strategy behind that, but the reality of the situation is it isn't. When we were faced with an issue, and it was an issue that we didn't fully understand or comprehend or appreciate, but we were fairly early out of the door, so we knew that I think we acknowledged there was an issue sooner than most other people. We acted on it well before every other people, well before most other market participants, and I know because we came under a fair degree of criticism for overreacting early on as well. But the two tenets that we embraced as we went through this, we said we don't know what this is, but there are two things that we are going to do through this crisis, and one was around cash, and we're going to conserve cash no matter what. How compelling the case for expense or investment. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to communicate, and we're going to communicate with all stakeholders. Right. So we stepped up our engagement with trade bodies, with regulatory authorities. We stepped up our engagement with our supplier partners. We stepped up our engagement with our customers. We stepped up our engagement with our employees as well, right? With our shareholders and our investors. So we gave ourselves the target of being on at least one platform daily. So whether it was a supplier partner focused event, a client webinar, a trade industry event, something like this. But we took on a target, like we would take on a sales target or an operational effectiveness target. We took on a target saying on visibility, saying that look, we want to be averaging one platform daily. And I think most days we've had something or the other. There's been the odd sort of day of complete radio silence, and over a period of time that has now sort of accumulated and built up in people's recognition and memory. And it might seem like a digital campaign, but it started one day at a time.
Oh, great. I think that is very true. The visibility factor has been high and practically from week one. So that's great. I've come across another initiative that you've launched recently, Rakshit, Travel Tour Associate, if I'm not mistaken. I understand that it is an offshoot of the work at home situation that we find ourselves in. So could you elaborate a little more on that and share insights?
Yeah, so India is a particularly unique market, right? In that Indian users, I mean, it's we've probably got one of the largest users of user base of technology in terms of mobile phone, the installed base, and remote access to the internet. But we've got some of the lowest e-commerce penetration rates as well for general, as e-commerce as a percentage of general retail, right? We've then got particularly, let's say for the international leisure business or the international FIT business, we've got an evolved customer base that should be comfortable transacting remotely. But then we've got regulatory constraints in terms of payments, settlements, KYC obligations, BTQ LRS compliance, and so on and so forth, particularly when you're settling for the overseas component of your trip, right? And so we've got this mix of factors where that make it pretty ideal for certain kinds of models, right? And this home-based agent model is something that we've been toying with for a while, because retail economics, because of real estate economics in India, are particularly difficult, right? And so what you want is, you want to give the customer the confidence and comfort of physical proximity, but you don't want what the customer doesn't really appreciate or pay for the infrastructure that goes around it, right? It's a bit like banking, right? I don't remember the last time I was inside a bank branch, but I like the idea that it is there, right? So we've been toying with the idea of this home-based agent model, saying, how is it that I can give you that trust, i.e., there's somebody in your local community that you know and you trust. And LIC did a great job of that for many years, right? The LIC agent was the big part of it was that they were a member of the community. And so how is it that we convey trust and confidence to you from within your community? We deliver the products and services that you would find attractive. We provide means for compliance that you would need to fulfill your obligations. So it's an interesting experiment. We want to see. Also, we think that the timing's right, because it's at during disruptions like this that people, particularly people that have been salaried all their lives, are certainly experiencing a loss of employment or loss of salary, and are starting to think about entrepreneurial aspirations. The social construct now appreciates and acknowledges self-employment as a very respectable form of occupation, and people like this, the flexible hours, the lack or some degree of association, but not necessarily a full-blown commitment to an organization or a brand, right? So I think just this confluence of technological development, social changes, the way people are thinking, how they view work and employment, and the individual collectively, I think that the timing felt right, and we thought we'd take this to market and see what we get out of it. We think this could be quite a meaningful sort of contributor to our Indian business, which which isn't the largest by any stretch of imagination, but now certainly not a small business either. We've got scale.
So great. I think it's a great disruption solution, and at the same time gives opportunity to so many travel professionals to freelance in a way, while of course following the guidelines of being associated with the organization. Great. So related to leisure is MICE, and FCM has had a pretty strong presence in that sector. How do you see that panning out post this COVID situation?
My hunch is that it won't. It's going to take longer to come back,
Okay.
right? Just because of when we look at the sequence of reopenings or relaxations of constraints, we think that large groups and large events will be the last. It will be the end of the pipeline. I think the day the government says, look, it's okay to hold a concert, I suspect we're at the end of this journey, right? So in the meantime, I think that sector is going to evolve a little bit. We're going to have to work on propositions that enable two things: enable sort of smaller gatherings, so a series of smaller gatherings that convey the impression of a large gathering, or a combination of physical and digital, where you have a small group of people congregating in person, but you're broadcasting live to a much larger audience. So you have your platforms partly physical, partly digital, and you try and convey the same scale of the event and try and get similar results. But I suspect beyond that, it's a little bit of a waiting game for MICE. It will come back. I think particularly in India, people find comfort in groups. There is strength in numbers. I don't think that will change dramatically enough to damage demand for MICE products and services permanently. But I suspect it's a longer haul to recovery for MICE than for the other segments.
Right. But so hence, from a business perspective, probably the focus on individual leisure is, as you've the initiative that you rolled out.
We think that premium FIT leisure will be the first segment to bounce. We're already seeing early signs of that, because it's easier for individuals to make decisions for themselves. It's a little bit harder for companies to make decisions for their people.
Right.
And so we think that we think that the early adopters will be in premium FIT travel. And we're seeing that already with private jet charters and things like that. Right. So as soon as I think the scheduled airline constraints are relaxed, the premium FIT leisure traveler will return. Once we see some traction there, companies will look at that and draw confidence from that and say, look, if they can travel for leisure, they can certainly travel for business. The risks aren't that different. We'll put some safety parameters around it. Once you get to doing that, I suspect the MICE segment will follow.
Yeah. Great. I think you've got the FCM India playbook appropriately aligned for the next few months. Any other initiatives that you have on the cards, or anything that you are planning to be rolling out?
So I think from our point of view, I think we're not looking at starting anything new, right? During this process, we're definitely accelerating ideas that were already in incubation, and were already on our radar, and were at different stages of development or evolution. We're definitely accelerating those. I think for us, like I said, we have to do two things very well, which is conserve cash and communicate with all stakeholders. That's underway. We need to drive greater digital transformation and digital penetration across all of our products and services, because what we don't want is, so we got punched in the nose by something we didn't see this time around. But what would be unforgivable is we if 2 years down the line another virus or a similar, or a geopolitical event punched us in the nose, and we had a similar sort of we were caught unawares or off guard because of that. So we need to put ourselves in a position where we can seamlessly transition service delivery capabilities across channels and methods and modules. So that's absolutely critical for us. And I think in terms of what's really taking up a lot of bandwidth with our senior team right now is products. I would say products, culture, and brand. So how do we preserve the culture? How do we protect the brand and almost maybe even try and sort of draw relative advantage, because we suspect a lot of brands are going to get damaged through this process, and just by steering right, we might be able to get some relative advantage. But also, what is the product portfolio, how we think about it, how we manage it, how we merchandise it, how we take it to market, how we deliver that to customers, and so on and so forth. So that's what we're working on right now.
Great.
Also, I think the worst is behind us. The night is always darkest just before dawn. That's where we are. But I personally believe that a world without travel is frankly a world that probably doesn't merit living in. That people, I think, crossing borders, breaking down boundaries and barriers contributes to society. It certainly contributes to world peace. So countries that have a great sort of mobility of labor and goods and services typically don't go to war with each other. That's the reality of the situation. You have a high degree of codependence, and so you have a higher degree of security. I also think that in India, this industry has got fantastic runway.
So, Rakshit, thanks for the great insights and the inputs that you've shared. Before we sign off, if you could share a couple of lines, message that you'd like to give out, particularly to the young professionals in the corporate travel space.
Okay, so look, I believe the tide has turned. The night is darkest just before dawn. Things are about to get better. And remember that 98.5% of India has never, ever left these shores. And we have a sense of responsibility and a duty to ensure that their dreams and their aspirations get realized. So we've got to stay at it.
Great. I think that's very valid input, and will have people hang on for better times to come. Thank you so much, Rakshit, taking out the time for sharing your insights and all the updates about some of the great initiatives that you are leading. Thank you again, and look forward to interacting with you again on a similar platform soon.
Thanks, Suresh. Appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for watching. Do like, subscribe, and share to get future recordings and future insights from travel professionals in the corporate travel management space. Thank you. I'm Suresh Makhija, a seasoned corporate travel professional and author of The Rookie Corporate Gardener. The book is available on Amazon and is a must-read for colleagues who have been or are likely to be affected by the growing magnitude worldwide of layoffs, downsizing, or furloughs. The aim is to support them to deal with the vortex of varying emotions till another job comes by. Also, to utilize the time well, emerge resilient, and bounce back stronger and sharper.